For decades, they said Africa couldn't rise without permission. That freedom had limits, and those limits were written in contracts. But deep in West Africa, a silent rebellion began. It didn't start with soldiers or slogans. It started with gold. Gold that once left the country in barrels now stayed home. Gold that no longer fed foreign banks, but powered African dreams. This is not just a story of wealth. It's a story of revenge. Economic revenge against a system that built empires on African silence. And at the center of it all, one man, one country, one impossible idea. What if development could exist without debt? Because if that's true, the entire global order collapses. When the lights went out across the Sahel, the world pitied them. But while the headlines showed darkness, something else was awakening underground. Burkina Faso's gold, once a curse, now a code. A code that would fund factories, fuel energy, and ignite a generation's belief in self-rule. Traoré saw what others didn't. That energy independence is not a luxury, it's survival. Because a nation that begs for electricity will someday beg for everything. So he built solar grids that light up cities once forgotten. Refineries that turn dust into destiny. And every watt of power whispered the same dangerous truth. We no longer need you. That's why global lenders began to panic. Not because Burkina Faso built refineries, but because it did so without their loans. They called it a miracle. But inside Burkina Faso, they call it math. $18 billion, earned, not borrowed. Refineries built, not gifted. Factories funded, not financed. Every project challenged a centuries-old equation. That African progress required foreign permission. But Traoré didn't sign deals with the IMF. He signed deals with his own people. And when the numbers began to rise, GDP, employment, production, so did something that can't be measured in data, dignity. In Ouagadougou and Kédougou, small factories hum like heartbeats. Men who once mined for survival now manufacture for pride. And women who once sold imported goods now sell what they created. It's not just economic recovery. It's psychological liberation. But the true revolution isn't visible. It's hidden, in trade routes, power lines, and whispers across borders. Under the alliance of Sahel states, something extraordinary is forming. A network, not of dependency, but of defiance. Burkina Faso connects its gold to Mali's transport corridors. And Niger's energy grid completes the circuit. For the first time, nations once divided by colonial borders are binding themselves through infrastructure, not ideology. This is diplomacy without ambassadors. Trade without middlemen. Progress without permission. They call it infrastructure diplomacy. The West calls it a threat. Because the moment Africa begins building roads that serve Africans, aid loses its purpose. The old world order was simple. Africa exports raw, imports refined, and stays in debt. But Traoré flipped that rulebook into ashes. When Burkina Faso stopped borrowing, it didn't just free its economy. It exposed the global lie. That help was never help at all, it was control. The West wasn't furious because the mines were nationalized. It was furious because confidence was. And confidence is contagious. From Zimbabwe's lithium to Ghana's gold, a new question echoes through every African ministry. If they can do it without loans, why can't we? But the higher you rise, the heavier the pressure. Media outlets call Traoré a military populist. Financial institutions predict collapse. Analysts whisper of isolation. But beneath their polished words lies fear. Fear that Africa might succeed without them. In shadowed boardrooms, strategies shift. Trade agreements tighten. Crisis reports multiply. Because if one nation breaks free, the chain begins to rattle across the world. And yet, in Ouagadougou, the hum of factories grows louder. Burkina Faso doesn't argue, it builds. Every factory, every refinery, every light turned on. It is a declaration of war, fought with progress, not weapons. Confidence is spreading faster than any policy. In Tanzania, leaders rewrite mining contracts. In Ghana, gold stays within the borders. In Mali, the budget no longer waits for foreign signatures. This is not aid. It's awakening. For the first time in decades, Africa's financial discussions are happening in African capitals, not European ones. And inside the AES, a secret idea grows bolder every day. A Sahelian currency backed by minerals. Gold, lithium, and uranium. A currency so powerful that it could end the colonial franc's dominance forever. If that happens, the economic balance of the world will shift in a single heartbeat. Burkina Faso's gold is no longer metal, it's meaning. Every ounce mined now funds schools, soldiers, and factories. The army once reliant on aid is now powered by its own people's work. Farmers grow food with local fertilizers. Children learn under lights powered by their nation's sun. This isn't just economic reform. It's the rebirth of belief. And yet, behind every victory, one question haunts Traoré. Can freedom survive when it threatens profit? Because when a nation stops begging, the world stops smiling. And that's when the real war begins. The silent war of sabotage, sanctions, and smear campaigns. But maybe, just maybe, Burkina Faso has already won. Because it dared to try. The real treasure wasn't under the ground. It was in the realization that true wealth begins the moment a nation stops asking for permission to exist. So the question is no longer can Africa rise? The question is, who will try to stop it? Because now, the Sahel is awake. And the world can't unhear its heartbeat.